148. This one only has 2 verses. Servant's Heart, 548. Verse 1. Make me a servant like you, dear Lord, living for others each day. Humble and meek, helping the weak, loving in all that I say. Give me, Lord, a servant's heart. Here's my life, take every part. Give me, Lord, a servant's heart. We draw so close to you, that your love comes shining through. Give me, Lord, a servant's heart. On the second verse. Make me a witness like you, dear Lord, showing the love of the cross, sharing your word, till all have heard, serving whatever the cause. Give me, Lord, a servant's heart. Here's my life, take every part. Give me, Lord, a servant's heart. Help me draw so close to you, that your love comes shining through. Give me, Lord, a servant's heart. Give me, Lord, a servant's heart. Please be seated. Day by day, and with each passing moment, strength I find to meet my trials here. Trusting in my Father's wise bestowment, I'm no cause for worry or for fear. He whose heart is kind beyond all measure, gives unto each day what he thinks best. Loving me is part of pain and pleasure. On the second verse, that'll be the last verse, verse 2. Every day the Lord himself is near me, with a special mercy for each hour. All my cares he paid, what care and cheer me. He whose name is Counselor and Acapella. The protection of his child and treasure is a charge that on himself he laid. As thy days, thy strength shall be in measure. This the best to me. 147. Sounds beautiful. Amazing grace. Let's sing the even verses, verses 2 and 4. Verse 2. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious then, how grace appeared. 147, my apologies. Is that right? Faith is the victory. You said 4?
My number might be 413.
413.
Illegible.
Thank you. So 413. Faith is the victory. First and last verse. Encamped along the hills of life, ye Christian soldiers rise, and press the natural air, the night shall melt the golden skies. Against the foe and bells below, let all the strength be hurled. Faith is the victory we know, that overcomes the world. Faith is the victory, faith is the victory. Oh, glorious victory. Last verse. To him who overcomes the world, my reign it shall begin. Before the angels he shall know, his name confessed again. And onward from the hills of life, our hearts with love aflame, will vanquish all the host of night, and Jesus conquering name. Faith is the victory, faith is the victory, oh glorious victory that overcomes the world.
Good afternoon. Take your Bibles, turn with me to Matthew 7. Matthew 7, we began this morning a study in parables, and we have a message tonight that is a short synopsis of 3 parables. This does not mean that I won't preach a separate message on these whenever we do our study, but this is a nice snapshot of 3 parables that each has a similar theme to them. No doubt you have heard of a publication called the Guinness Book of World Records. Maybe you've given one or received one as a gift. Usually you buy those for the person you don't know what to buy for. It's like, here, have something to do. It holds interesting facts like the names of the world's tallest man, shortest man, the person who, the largest group to have ever assembled and performed a common task like skydiving or getting married at once. It's a book of random and offbeat world records. Do you want to know who holds the record for the most Big Macs ever eaten? That's a man named, that is actually a man named Donald Gorski. He's eaten more than 26,000 Big Macs over 40 years. In the Guinness Book of World Records, you can find the person who has the longest fingernails, the person with the longest mustache. Fortunately, those are not the same person. The highest vertical jump by a guinea pig. The record is 20 centimeters, by the way. You can even find the name of the person who holds the Guinness World Record for holding the most Guinness World Records. The man's name is Ashrita Furman. He has about 120 records, and he's constantly breaking his own records. Or do any of you appear in the Guinness Book of World Records? I'm seeing a bunch of no's. I don't see yeses. And for the most part, we would think, what a ridiculous thing to be known for, most of the things that are in that book. If I want to be remembered for something, it would not hopefully be the most Big Macs eaten or the most Whopper sandwiches or anything like that. I don't hold any world records, but I had the technology at the time, or even just a disposable film camera, I could possibly hold one world record. It wouldn't be Guinness Book of World Records, but there's a website called highscore.com where people can become famous for registering the highest score on any number of video games or consoles and such. I'm not much into modern gaming. I don't have any of the modern systems, and I don't play many games online. I play a backgammon and chess sometimes, and hearts and Yahtzee and different random things, but that wouldn't classify me as a gamer in today's world. But I'll tell you all that I did have an Atari 2600, which is older than most of the people that I'm speaking to right now. But the old Atari 2600, it was the first mainstream video game home console. I had a game called Keystone Capers. There wasn't really much of a purpose to it. You played the part of a policeman who was chasing a robber dressed in black and white stripes through a different maze of levels of a mall, and different things would fly at you, like a rolling shopping cart and different types of flying objects. And you had to dodge these or jump them or whatever, and then also catch the crook. And once you caught him, it would reset and you start the level again. Really very boring and mundane, but in the 1980s, there wasn't a lot to do. So I played this game over and over, and the high score that is registered on highscore.com for this game is 1 million. And it's probably 1 million because the guy who got that 1 million just gave up on it and was absolutely tired of playing this mundane, repetitious game. Well, one night I stayed up and continued to play because what else was I going to do? Sleep? That's not very fun for a teenager. So I played this game until I had achieved a score of over 6 million. I would be among the highscore.com royalty if I had some sort of proof of doing that. And think about it. You guys would all be asking for my autograph, and worldwide people would be showing up to see this guy who scored 6 million on Keystone Capers. Not at all. There are other things that I can do, and I say these things. You'll understand quickly that these aren't bragging because nothing that I'm going to mention is going to be worth bragging about. I've become quite skilled at tossing rubbish into the bin from great distances or despite difficult angles. Many times we sit in a quick service fast food restaurant and the trash can would be located at a tough angle. And I'd ask Tammy and Christian, I said, "You think I can make this?" And so the challenge was to try to put it in from whatever angle or sidearm or underhand or whatever the challenge would be. And I've become pretty good at it. I don't make them all, but pretty good. A lot better than that. A lot better at that than actual basketball in my older age. But I impress myself all the time with being able to do this. I can also generally predict what time it is without looking at the clock within a few minutes. I don't know if any of you guys have that same ability. There was a Seinfeld episode about that. Kramer said, I can tell the time, usually within a couple hours. And like, everybody can do that. Once at a theme park, this is a pretty cool thing. It's not a world record, but this is a neat thing that I had a chance to do. We're on a stand-up roller coaster, and I got my arms out like this, ready to, woo, because I'm not afraid. I don't need to hold the bars and stuff. But I had my arms out, and I saw that a guy on the front row was wearing a ball cap, and then he wasn't wearing a ball cap, right? Because they tell you don't wear hats because they'll blow, put all your items in a compartment. Well, he's wearing a hat, and then suddenly I see the hat go woof and blow off his head. And amazingly enough, I reached and snagged his hat from midair in this roller coaster. After the ride, he's looking down, and they're trying to look where they think it went off. And I walk up behind him with his hat, and he has to think, "How did this happen?" So that was pretty cool. But I do have a story. This is a little bit. I am the hero of this story. This is a pretty neat thing, but it actually just happened by random anyway. In our home there in Virginia, we happened to walk into a Lowe's home improvement store, like a B&Q over here. And we were walking in, and I noticed that there was a guy carrying some merchandise out the door I just came in. In the States, it's set up so that you enter one door and leave another door. I guess it's the same way over here. And he was leaving the door that people were coming in at, and about the time he comes through there, he started picking up the speed. The guy's, "Wait, stop, wait." And I realized this dude is thefting some stuff here. And so the employee stopped at the door because that's as far as they're permitted to go. They can't chase them outside the store premises. But I don't work at the store. So I chased out after him, and another man started running with me when we realized, hey, that dude's stealing some DeWalt tools. So we ran after the guy. And he was many yards in front of us, but we lost sight of him because he went behind some storage buildings. And but then we kept walking the perimeter. And I saw him up the place a little bit, and he's still got these tools, which are very heavy, and he's got to be very winded by this point. And he's got to cross this railroad track it's a gully and then a railroad track high, and another gully in there. And he's coming across with this, and on his way up the hill from the gully, he tripped and stumbled and is there, and he's got to be beat by this time. And I'm yelling, there he is, there he is. And I don't know if the guy thought that we had already got the cops there or whatever else, but he left the box and darted for his own safety. So I made my way over, got the box, and took it back into Lowe's. And the guy who was angry that he couldn't follow the thief anymore sees me coming in with the box that the dude just took and high-fived me. And turns out, I was youth pastor in Virginia there, and it turns out that I developed a pretty good relationship with that store, as you might imagine. They donated some stuff for our fall fun day and some other stuff. So that worked out pretty well. Sometimes I tell the story, but since I've got visitors today, I don't. Sometimes I tell the story. I stop before I get to the part where I came back into the store, and I say, and that's the best set of DeWalt tools I ever had. But I don't want you to think that So I took it back to the store, and but they were very good to us, and I did something I didn't have to do. Tammy said I reminded her of a Captain Day, a modern Captain America or something, But I don't know. I don't want to. But anyway, that's maybe about the coolest thing that I've ever done. These Guinness World Records are generally of no concern to anyone except for the record holder or some optimistic soul who wants to try to break one of these records. I've never told my Keystone Caper story except for to you guys and to one other church where I preached this same message, mainly for the reason that absolutely nobody would care what high score I set on a video game when I was 14 years old. A few people know the hat story. A few people know the Lowe's story. Why don't I tell you these stories? The reason that I told you these stories and the reason that I led into this intro of these folks from the Guinness Book of World Records, longest fingernails, and what happened? This thing, I don't know why this projector has been doing this recently. Next dude is the mustache dude. Again, like I told you, it is two different people. I may just have to bring my computer up here and let you look at everything. Could be. Again, I don't know why this has been giving me trouble. If it does it come up? I think it's coming up. No. So you got your guy with the world's longest mustache, and then different world records for groups of people who have hula hooped together, or the longest time hula hooping and things like that. And again, all these people together, and even my own stories, would contribute to a group of people who might be called the kings of things that don't matter. I read a quote by a famous preacher. I can't remember who. Guess he wasn't that famous. No, it's just my memory. Who said, the worst thing in this life is not to be a failure, but to be a success at something that doesn't matter. That's profound. These individuals that I have pictured here, different stories that we might could tell. And everybody does a story. If you stop somebody on the street and say, hey, tell me the most interesting thing about yourself, they'd have a story. And it might be a little interesting. A few would be noteworthy. A few might be even worthy of being printed. But many times we find that the hobbies that we have, that the passions that we have, the interest, are all in things that in the eternal scale won't matter at all. We're going to look at 3 parables here and see individuals who were kings of things that don't matter. In Matthew 7, verse 24, therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them, I will liken him unto a wise man which built his house upon a rock. The rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell not, for it was founded on a rock. Everyone that heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them not shall be likened unto a foolish man which built his house upon the sand. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. This is one parable that Jesus tells. This will be in the form of a narrative. This would be an exemplary story, an example to follow, an example not to follow. If you're thinking about your outline on back there, the kinds of things that would be found there. Let's look at one more before I look into that one. Matthew 25. In Matthew 25, I won't read every verse because I think you're familiar with this passage. In Matthew 25, verse 1, then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins, which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. Again, this is a similitude in type, and it is a kingdom parable. Thinking again about your outline on the back there. These virgins, 5 were wise, 5 were foolish. What differentiated the wise from the foolish was 5 were prepared in that they had oil for their lamps, and 5 did not have oil for their lamps. And we, in reading that passage and studying it, we understand that that is a type of salvation, because the 5 foolish virgins went away to get oil for the lamp while they tarried for the bridegroom. The bridegroom came while they were away and the doors were shut and no one else was getting in. Symbolic of the ark, symbolic of the rapture. Once it's too late, it's too late. We have one more example that I want for us to look at. Don't turn there at the moment. I'll just mention it briefly, and we'll think of the 3 of these together. In Luke chapter 12, we have the parable that is called the parable of the rich fool. He's a man who had plenty of everything. And he saw that his storehouses, his barns were full, and he said, I've got a plan. I'm going to tear down all my old barns and build newer, bigger, state-of-the-art, green barns. I didn't say green, but I thought I would just throw that in there. I'm going to build these to specs, it's going to be low emissions and carbon neutral and all these things. And we're going to put everything I've got in there. And then I will tell my soul, you've labored for many years. Now it's time to sit back, relax, pull the handle on the recliner, eat, drink, and be merry. And God says to the man, thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. And then who shall all these things be which thou hast laid up? These are the 3 parables that fall into the categories of kings of things that don't matter. Now, I've got some illustrations for you to see how we each make a trade in our lives, most of us, every day. But before I do that, I want you to think about those 3 parables I just mentioned. In all 3 of them, you find that they share a common element, because that common element in each of those is that someone is called a fool or foolish. Who in here has their life ambition to be known as a fool? Me neither. None of us want that. Because even though it would not be a compliment to be considered a fool of this world, like a comedian or a jester or someone who just habitually does things wrong. What is Mr. Bean called over here in Britain? Captain something? Captain Danger or something like that? You know who I'm talking about? Rowan Atkinson? Johnny English. Maybe that's the name. Yeah, I don't know where I was getting Captain Danger. That doesn't make any sense at all. Johnny English. In the States, his shows are called Mr. Bean. And he's generally viewed as everything he does, he screws it up. He just bumbles his way. Sometimes he bumbles his way into success, right? If things work out the way that he should. There's another cartoon, something like that in the States. I don't know if it's shown over here. Inspector Gadget was whenever I was younger. And he wasn't the brightest, but he stumbled into getting things right. Well, in the Bible, a fool is not talking about that kind of person. It's not talking about someone that we laugh at. It's talking about someone who defies God and lives in a way like there is no God and like this world is all that they have. Each of us use or waste time daily. We can exchange time for training. We go to school. We go to higher education. And here's what happens with your time. As you use time and gain training, you see what happens to your talents here. It grows greater. You lose time. Of course, you end up losing time until the end of time. And your talents at the end of your life, you reach a peak, and then as you grow old, you start to lose some of your talents and abilities, and you still end up with something. You still have the training, but then you're dead, buried, and gone, and that's where your life went. Nobody has the luxury of escaping the draining of time. You can trade time for training, for education, even life experience trains us. Many people, most of us at some point, end up trading time for money. We trade time for money on an hourly basis. That's generally the way that our pay is determined. If we're applying for a job, we ask someone, hey, what is the rate of pay? Well, they might give you a figure of so many $1,000 or so many £1,000, and you say, okay, I recognize that's per year. But we really want to know, we really want to break down of how much does it pay per hour? How much do I make? If I trade you an hour of my time, how much money do I get in exchange? And that works like this. You work, your time goes down, your money goes up, you hit a maximum of money, you retire, and then you lose a little money. And hopefully when you die, there's something to go to your children, your grandchildren, or your favorite charity of some sort, Faith Baptist Church of Lake and Heath, anything you want to donate to. So that's the way it works whenever we trade our time for money. We can also trade, speaking of trading time for money, we sell our lives to our employers an hour at a time. Maybe it's $10, $15, $20, or whatever the equivalent be in pounds. Maybe even make $100 or £100 per hour. I mean, Jed probably, and a few others that are at his same. No, he doesn't even know how much he makes. It's just so much. He's like, money's not. That's what I'm talking about. $100 per hour. That's what you're at, right? Not. Yeah, just a little shy. Don't let him fool you with his modesty. I'm sure it's close to that. But whatever it is you make per hour, whatever you've made per hour, it's probably not what LeBron James earns per hour. Even you Brits know who LeBron James is, right? He's the most famous basketball player in the United States. He thinks he's as good as Michael Jordan, but he cannot hold his candle. And he is inferior in every way to somebody. Yet, all in all, he would beat me in a game 1-1 100 times out of 100. So he has the value. His team values him so that they pay him not per hour, but per every minute of basketball game that he plays. He earns, in U.S. dollars, $9,781 per minute that he plays in a basketball game. It's not bad work if you can get it. I know what you guys are doing when you get home this afternoon. Just get out the hoop and get to work here, because we need another LeBron James. Take care of mommy and daddy whenever they get older, right? Take care of mommy and daddy Bradley, okay? Isaiah, you gotta get hooped up, man. But I think that they offer the same sort of money over here for footballers. So it's all what game you want to play. Be nice to be paid that sort of money to play a game, but that's an example of exchange of time for money. There's one more way that we can trade our time, and we'll save that one for a little bit later on. The Bible has plenty to say about slothfulness and laziness. Here's a visual of what happens when we waste our time away. You saw an example of how we can trade time for education and training, to trade time for money. But what if we're not doing any of those things? What if we're not, where we don't have a job where we're working and earning money, or we're not doing school? I realize there are stay-at-home moms, and your job is not useless or worthless. Someone calculated that if a stay-at-home mom were paid for all the jobs that she did, house cleaning and doing the laundry per article of clothing, and for doing the deep cleaning of the house, and for preparing meals to be paid on the same par as a chef at a restaurant would, and you begin to calculate all these things, that the average woman would earn more than the average man does in the home. But what if we're not schooling or working or managing a home, and we're just blowing time? Well, there's actually a payoff for that too. And in that case, what you're doing, if you're just wasting time, is you're exchanging time for pleasure. You say, I'm not really getting any pleasure, I'm just wasting time. But what's happening is, as time ticks down, and it inevitably will, then the pleasure that you have comes and goes in moments, sporadically, and it only stays there. And at the end of your life, you don't even have the pleasure. If you went to school, then you at least have a head full of knowledge. And if you worked a job, you at least have a pocket full of money or at least something in the bank, hopefully. But when you waste time and you trade time for pleasure, you have nothing in the end. We talk about the life of a no oil virgin. Those 5 foolish virgins there. They fit into the category of someone who has wasted time because they lingered at the times they should have been going to purchase oil. And again, you see the same thing play out in their lives. They had moments of pleasure. Surely they socialized with the other virgins. They had time. But when it was time for business, time for what they were there for, and that was to celebrate the bride, the bridegroom, they weren't around. They had nothing to show for it at the end of their lives. You have the life of a sandcastle builder in Matthew 26:27 of chapter 7. That's the foolish man who's built his house upon the sand. Now, you say, well, he's not exactly building a sandcastle because he's building it from wood or concrete or steel. But the problem is the foundation is lacking, and what it turns out is that whatever he builds, even if he uses high-quality values, high-quality material, if you build it without a foundation, it's going to end up the same way as a sandcastle does. Who's built sandcastles? All right? And then you come back a week later. It's still there? You come back the next day. Is it still there? Sometimes even you come back the same day. Is it still there? Depending on where you built it, depending on where the tide was the time you built it, it's gone. But it can't be gone. I spent a lot of time on it. It does not have intrinsic value just because you spent a lot of time on it. The time has to be spent on the right things, in this case on the right foundation. Here's how we trade time for money and how we trade money for house. So, we can build. Building takes time, right? Building takes moolah, right? And hopefully at the end you have something that will last. Well, you can trade your time. You spend your time to make money. You take your money, you build a house, and you do that. And unfortunately, as you got that money, now your money gets diminished and you build the house. But if you didn't build it on a foundation, if you didn't build it on the right foundation, then you don't even have the house. Now look at us here at the end of our lives. We have nothing to show for it because we didn't invest in the right places and we built on a foundation that was not solid. The third person that I mentioned earlier in the parables we talked about, the third fool, I call him the fruit hoarder because it says there, he has nowhere to bestow his fruits. Well, fruit, grain, anything that comes from the field, his life savings, his crops, hay, anything that he could have harvested is done this way. He spends his time to make his money, and I do have a couple, it's hard to see here, but I have a couple of moments here that as time passes, you see a dotted line down here. When he hits this dotted line, that's retirement. The dotted line there is retirement. And the Bible says of this man, thou fool, this night shall thy soul be required of thee. Who will the things belong to after you're dead? Well, they'll belong to somebody, but they won't belong to him. And Jesus uses this parable to decry those who are rich toward themselves and not toward God. Annabelle, stop. What we have is, even among Christians, we have a problem of those who have spent their lives and made their money and bought their houses and lived their lives of pleasure, but they have not been rich toward God. They have not laid up treasure in heaven. How do we lay up treasure in heaven? Well, we think about these three people. Out of these three fools, the most foolish has got to be the foolish virgins. They did something they could have easily taken care of in time, and they didn't. And then next to them, you've got the guy who built on the sand. He built something that stood for a while. It was worth something for a little while, but in the end, it was all wasted too. The wisest, at least, would be this guy who hoarded this fruit, who built bigger barns. He would at least be the wisest out of those. Yet even him, he gave no thought to eternity. So we think about, how can a person be rich toward God, as that phrase says? I have no idea what this slide's going to do. All right, just advance to the next one. Matthew 6:20 says what I've just been talking about. Lay not up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through and steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. What can we do with our life, with our money, to gain eternal treasure? That's really the only life that's going to have any significance once we're dead. We could be known for various things. We could win a Nobel Prize. We could hold an Olympic world record. We could do a lot of things. But all those things will count for nothing in eternity. What are ways that we can lay up treasure in heaven? Matthew 5:12 says, they that are persecuted for the gospel's sake will be rich in heaven. Matthew 16:15, we're told to go and preach the gospel to every creature. Whenever we go forth bearing precious seed, we will doubtless come bringing our sheaves with us. That's soul winning. And a third way we can be rich in heaven and rich toward God is by giving toward spreading the gospel. Philippians chapter 4. This is the last place I'll ask you to turn. Just turn here, and we'll be done in just a moment. In Philippians 4, verse 15, Paul says this, now ye Philippians know also that in the beginning of the gospel, when I departed from Macedonia, no church communicated with me as concerning giving and receiving, but ye only. Communication there refers to giving, fellowship in the gospel, giving toward Paul's missionary journeys. For even at Thessalonica ye sent once and again unto my necessity, not because I desire a gift, but I desire fruit that may abound to your account. So giving toward spreading the gospel is a way to be rich toward God. In all of those foolish examples, I showed you how at the end of the life, they had no time left, and they had nothing to last or value. If you want your life to count for something to God, how do you make it happen? By being persecuted for His sake, by going and preaching the gospel, and by giving to support those that preach the gospel. Here's what your life can give like. Here's what your life can look like if you do these three things. You, of course, spend your life to make money, but in the process of spending your life, the money that you earn that is given toward the cause of God increases your treasure in heaven. With your life, being a witness as you should, and giving toward those causes that lead to the salvation of others, you see fruit that may abound to your account. Those being the souls that are won as a result of the money that you've given, and the treasure that you've laid up continues to grow exponentially. If I were giving a course on finances, you would look at these four options, the three foolish ways, and then this way, and you would say, this is easily the way that I should invest my life and invest my money to make this happen, because this is actually how we see that we have the greatest increase. And yet we can look at it on a spreadsheet, and we can look at it on a screen, we can look at it on our computer screens, and we say, yes, clearly this is the way that we should go. Obviously, this makes the most sense. This has the most reward. Yet whenever we deal with our practical lives, the way that we spend our time daily, and the way that we spend our money, we don't spend our time and money in the ways that earn the most benefits. Let this not just be a visual. Let this not just be a recommendation, but let this be something that we internalize so that we understand that the way that we make our lives count for eternity is through the souls of others and through giving toward the proliferation of the gospel here and around the world.